Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take the articles, the research, all the notes you've gathered, and we really try to distill them.
Right. We braille it all down into the most potent, most usable insights.
We act as your guides, helping you figure out what really matters in that whole stack of source material.
And our deep dive today has a really unique focus. We are unpacking sources all about the gentle art of starting the new year.
Okay.
Specifically, how to approach simple, everyday English with confidence and just a profound sense of ease. Our mission is to turn that knowledge into clarity and calm.
That clarity and calm is so important, isn't it? We all know that pressure January can bring.
Absolutely.
That urge to start fast, to learn everything all at once. But this deep dive, which is really inspired by the learning spirit you find on channels like Fluent Mindcast, is offering something a bit different.
It is.
It's more of a cozy, supportive guide for those of you who want to improve your everyday English by focusing less on, rapid-fire complexity and more on that steady, enjoyable consistency.
And we're going to try and reinforce that calm message with our approach today. To really support your learning, our whole narration, everything we say, will be delivered slowly, clearly, and naturally.
So the way we're speaking is part of the practice.
Exactly. This pace is designed as listening practice for you, the learner. This isn't just a summary of ideas. It's a session to train your ear. We're going to focus on rhythm, on sound, on the natural intonation of simple language, not, overloading you with complicated grammar or huge vocabulary lists.
So we really encourage you to just relax, absorb the sound as we go. Like you said, the new year brings this huge pressure to jump into these intense study schedules.
Right.
But what we're arguing, based on your sources, is that the better way is to start gently. Think of it like opening a blank notebook.
I like that.
And focusing all your energy on consistency, that daily ritual over the intensity, making sure the practice feels like a supportive routine, not some massive, intimidating thing you have to do.
And the unanimous voice across all the sources we looked at points to this one core truth. Simple English. It just takes the pressure off immediately. It removes that paralyzing fear that so often comes with starting a new language phase.
Right.
And it lets you build a stable, sturdy foundation that you can actually sustain for the long run. By choosing simplicity now, you are making a choice for your own long-term psychological and, linguistic health.
Okay, so let's unpack this initial mindset shift, because that feels like a really critical starting point. Psychologically, January always feels like the perfect starting line, a clean slate.
It does.
But why do the sources you found insist so strongly that the focus has to be on how we start the habit, not just, riding that initial wave of New Year motivation?
Because that wave is often fueled by adrenaline and these really high expectations, which, are just not sustainable. January gives us that wonderful, fresh psychological start, yes.
Of course.
But the sources warn again and again against the trap of intensity. If we start learning too fast with too much pressure to perform, we just trigger burnout. And then we start to associate the language with stress, not with discovery.
Which is the opposite of what we want.
Exactly. And that's why simple English isn't just a nice thing to do. It's a profound learning strategy.
That's a really important distinction. It's not about lowering your standards for the goal itself, but lowering the friction of just getting started. I think a lot of learners feel like using simple English is a compromise.
It is the absolute opposite of a compromise. Simple English is, it's a scientifically sound strategy for getting the most engagement and retention. It just strategically removes that immediate pressure to be grammatically perfect or to have this huge academic vocabulary.
So you're focusing on the basics.
We're focusing on communication.
Yeah.
By sticking to those foundational structures like present tense, simple past, basic future, you guarantee you're going to have a lot of successful uses. And every successful thought, every short-spoken phrase, it registers as a micro-achievement.
Okay, micro-achievements. Let's stay there for a second. So if I successfully just think to myself, I need coffee now, that's a small win.
It's a huge win.
And it reduces my overall anxiety about the language.
Precisely. And all those little micro-achievements build up. They build confidence little by little, as the sources put it. And that low-stakes success is what keeps you going for much longer than the rush of, say, learning 50 complex words in one go, only to forget 40 of them by the next morning.
And this leads us to what all the materials say is the real secret to long-term language success. It's consistency, not intensity.
100%.
The research is just overwhelming. The learners who succeed in the long run are never the ones who tried to cram 6 hours of study on January 1st.
No.
They're the ones who committed to maybe 10 minutes of focused, relaxed practice every single day.
That daily repetition, even of the simplest things, is how the brain really moves language from short-term to long-term memory. And this is directly linked to a key psychological insight from the materials: the value of a relaxed mind during practice. When a learner is stressed about performance, constantly checking their own grammar, anxious about words, the brain's learning mechanisms actually start to shut down. They prioritize managing the anxiety instead.
Let's drill down on that. You mentioned some detailed facts in the sources that support this. Studies show that relaxed learners remember, what, significantly more information.
Yes, significantly more. It all comes down to filtering and cognitive load. When you're relaxed, your brain isn't diverting energy to producing cortisol or being on high alert. The amygdala, which regulates fear, is quieter.
So learning feels safe.
It feels like a safe, low-stakes activity.
Yeah.
And when that emotional filter is turned down, the new information, the sounds, the meanings, flows much more cleanly into the hippocampus, the memory center. It's less likely to be blocked or distorted by self-judgment.
So if the input is simple and your mind is calm, the whole process of storing information for the long term is it's way more efficient.
Exactly. If your brain is relaxed, it's open. It's ready to see new patterns. It's not wasting critical energy on anxiety or fighting with itself. When we approach it calmly, the absorption rate just goes up dramatically. The learning experience changes from a tense test to a steady exploration.
So here's the first gentle invitation for you, our listener. Just relax. Absorb the sounds, the rhythm, the deliberate pace we're modeling today. Let it feel comfortable. Just knowing that a relaxed brain learns better changes everything.
It does.
There's no rush to get everything right now. The simple act of listening without pressure is the most productive thing you can do.
And that commitment to starting slow allows you to build a foundation that is truly sustainable. When you focus on short, simple phrases, on language that's relevant to your everyday life, English starts to integrate itself into your routine, almost subconsciously.
Right. It stops being a subject.
It stops being this demanding subject you have to force yourself to study, and it becomes more of a supportive internal companion.
Right.
And that stability is the single biggest predictor of long-term success.
So the mindset is clear. Slow, steady, relaxed.
And above all, consistent.
That low-pressure commitment is probably the best New Year promise we can make to ourselves. Now that we've taken the pressure off our minds, let's talk about where we actually put this new calm energy. Let's talk about the morning routine.
Great place to start.
We've embraced the relaxed mindset, but how does English actually fit into those quiet January mornings? The sources suggest we don't need long sessions or special materials. So where does this simple English live?
It thrives in the mundane, comfortable, quiet moments of your day. It lives in your internal morning thoughts, the little plans you make, the small reflections you have while you're doing something habitual.
Like making tea or coffee.
Exactly. Preparing your first cup of tea, organizing your desk. These are the moments of inner speech where high-frequency practice happens without the pressure of having to perform for someone else.
So just narrating my routine to myself in my head using only simple sentences, is that really as valuable as formal study?
It is absolutely foundational. In fact, many of the sources say to prioritize this over formal study in the first few weeks. This internal dialogue, it's sometimes called covert rehearsal, and it activates many of the same parts of your brain as speaking out loud.
Okay.
The sources provide some really clear examples. I'll say them at a very slow, clear pace, and we really encourage you to just listen to the rhythm, the intonation. Maybe even repeat them softly to yourself during the pause. The first step is always training the ear, modeling a slow, calm pace. This is a new day. I feel rested.
A slightly longer, gentle pause than usual. See how the thought connects right to the sound? There's no complex grammar getting in the way. The rhythm is just steady and it's reassuring.
Modeling a slow, calm pace. Today, I want to feel calm.
A gentle pause. The simplicity there makes the meaning, the intention so clear. Just the most basic verbs.
Modeling a slow, calm pace. I will take things step by step.
A gentle pause. And that practices the simple future I will, which is one of the most useful structures for planning your day. But it's wrapped in this comfortable, low-stress intention.
So many learners just underestimate the power of these short, intentional internal phrases. They aren't just thoughts. You're building the neural pathways, you're building the roads for quick access to the language without the self-conscious stress of speaking. It's pure, non-judgmental practice.
This comes back to that fascinating cognitive process the sources highlighted, the idea of thinking in English. One of the curious facts was that thinking in English is structurally as powerful as speaking it, especially in the beginning.
Hmm.
Children actually learn language first through this simple inner speech. They connect ideas before they can ever say a complex, perfect sentence. The internal engine has to be running first.
That fact really highlights the biological reality of how we acquire language. The internal processing is the true engine of fluency. So by intentionally using simple English to narrate your routine, I'm making coffee now, I need fresh air, I should check my plan, you are slowly, steadily training your brain to feel a fundamental comfort with the language itself.
Comfort. That's the non-negotiable prerequisite here, isn't it?
Absolutely. Over time, when you do this consistently, English stops feeling like this external subject, something you have to study for a test.
Right.
And it subtly shifts into becoming an internal companion that just helps you navigate your day and your inner world. That transition from subject to companion is a huge milestone for any learner. It's the moment when that internal resistance to practicing just drops to almost zero.
That's a wonderful way to put it. If English feels like a companion, I'm not fighting it, I'm just using it to help myself. It sounds like the beauty of simple English in the morning is just it's incredibly low barrier to entry.
It is.
No need to look up complex vocabulary for the aroma of coffee wafting through the cool morning air.
Correct. The core focus is functional communication and comfort. We're focusing on high-frequency words that are the most useful. Calm, step, want, will, need, feel. That focused repetition makes them accessible and guarantees those immediate, consistent wins.
And those wins are the fuel for building a long-term habit. The new year is always synonymous with setting goals, and that whole process can be really stressful.
Very stressful.
But the sources offer a brilliant strategic way to talk about goals without that anxiety. How does simple English make our big, sometimes scary aspirations feel not just reachable, but calming?
The main goal here is clarity, not complexity. We're sort of culturally conditioned to believe that important things like our future plans need impressive, complex language.
Right, you have to sound serious.
But the sources show that complexity often just introduces friction, resistance, and doubt. Simple language, on the other hand, gives you immediate, focused clarity, and that naturally calms the mind. If you can define what you want using the simplest, most direct words, your mind sees the goal as immediately achievable.
So we're just stripping away the linguistic pressure. We're aiming for functional communication with our future selves, not like a presentation to a board of directors.
Precisely. You remove the need to perform entirely. Let's look at some of the concrete examples for talking about your learning intentions for the new year. Listen carefully and feel free to repeat these phrases softly in the pauses. Pay attention to how the simple structure still conveys real conviction. Modeling a slow, calm pace. I want to improve my English.
A gentle pause. That's a clear statement of desire. Notice the strength that comes from just how direct I want to is.
Modeling a slow, calm pace. I plan to practice a little every day.
A gentle pause. This statement is so powerful it uses the future form I plan to, but the action itself is small, consistent, and low pressure. A little every day.
The sources point to some powerful research connecting simplicity and success and goal setting in general. People are just measurably more likely to stick to their resolutions when they define them in simple, concrete, actionable terms.
That's a core psychological principle.
It is, and we're just leveraging it through language. When the linguistic definition of the goal is clear and uncomplicated, the path to getting there feels less daunting. It reduces that emotional and mental resistance before you even start.
That makes perfect sense. If the statement of the goal itself is complicated, if I'm worried about my grammar while I'm defining my goal, I've just added this unnecessary emotional layer to the task. A simple statement streamlines the whole thing.
From a language learning perspective, this approach is so helpful because talking about your simple plans helps you practice essential future forms naturally within a meaningful context.
You're not just doing a grammar drill.
Exactly. We naturally use structures like I want to, I plan to, I am going to, and I will when we talk about our hopes. You're practicing useful grammar for a real reason, not for a test. This removes the grammar pressure and makes the learning process feel supportive, not demanding.
So the lesson for January is clear. Define your aspirations in the simplest, clearest terms you can. And in doing that, you're doing two things at once. You're practicing essential English, and you're dramatically increasing your psychological chances of actually sticking with it.
It's the definition of efficiency. Using simple English for your goals turns the language into an immediate tool for self-support. It goes from being a potential hurdle to being an indispensable aid for your own personal growth.
Okay, so we've got the relaxed mindset, the quiet internal practice, and the simple goal setting. Now let's focus on the absolute foundational starting step, listening.
Yes.
Why is this calm, slow listening practice so overwhelmingly recommended by the sources for setting the tone in January, especially when the instinct for so many learners is to rush into fast, authentic dialogue?
This is a cornerstone concept. The sources really emphasize that simple, slow listening is the most effective way to help your ears adjust without conscious effort. When the speech is slow and clear, you're not fighting to decode the meaning instantly.
Taking it in.
You're just taking it in. You're focusing purely on the acoustic data. The specific sound of each word, the connection between words, what we call linking, and the overall rhythm and intonation. You're giving your brain a clean, low-stress reference point.
And the sources stress that you have to let go of the need to understand every single word. That is a massive relief for any learner.
It is the key to unlocking subconscious learning. You don't need perfect understanding to make profound progress. Your brain is an amazing pattern recognition machine. It's internalizing the underlying structure, the rhythm, the music of the language, even when you're relaxed and only partly following the explicit meaning.
That's deep subconscious acoustic learning.
Exactly. And it's critical for being able to produce natural speech later on.
Let's go a little deeper into the cognitive process. The sources mention a fascinating fact. The brain keeps processing language, organizing all that acoustic data, even after the listening session is over. Why does that make quiet, calm, short sessions so effective?
This gets into the neurobiology of memory consolidation. When you stop listening, your brain doesn't just switch off the language center. It begins this sustained effort of organizing the patterns and the information you just received, moving it from your active working memory into long-term storage.
And that consolidation phase works best when the input was calm.
It's most effective then, yes. Chaotic, fast, or high-stress input gives the brain disordered data to sort through, which increases the cognitive load. But calm sessions provide clean, steady data that the brain can process efficiently during the silence that follows.
So we should embrace that quiet space after a listening session. That silence isn't wasted time, it's productive consolidation time for the brain.
Exactly. It's when the learning truly sticks. By listening to simple, slow English regularly, you build this profound, unshakable familiarity with how the language sounds. And that familiarity, how English feels and flows on a rhythmic level, is what makes speaking easier later. Your mind already has the musical score, so when you go to sing the words, the melody is already there.
I can anticipate a common concern here. A lot of learners might be thinking, this slow, simple English feels too basic. I want to jump into the faster, more complex conversations native speakers use.
Yes.
What reassurance do the sources offer about why this slow start is so necessary?
That concern is universal. We have to acknowledge that simple and slow English can, at first, feel too basic, or like a step backward. But we have to emphasize, as the sources do, that this slow start isn't just beneficial, it's a necessary strategic phase.
So think of it like stretching before a run.
It's exactly like that. You're not avoiding speed. You're mastering the subtle physics of the language first. This slow pace builds a solid foundation of familiarity with sounds, with word connections, with rhythmic patterns. It is the essential stretching phase before the marathon.
And without that stretching, you risk injury, or in this case, burnout.
Precisely. If you skip this critical phase, you end up trying to speak quickly before your ear has developed its acoustic map. And that leads directly to frustration, frequent errors, and eventually burnout, because you're constantly trying to produce sounds your ear hasn't securely logged yet. Starting slow builds confidence because you are successfully replicating the fundamental sounds. It strengthens deep understanding, which, in turn, makes faster, more natural, and more complex English dramatically easier down the road. It's not about avoiding advanced speech. It's about preparing for it in the most sustainable way possible.
So to you, the listener, we invite you to listen with intention right now. Focus only on the sound. Let your brain absorb the deliberate pacing and the subtle connections between our words without any pressure. This calm immersion is the practice. So we have the relaxed mindset, we have the passive input of listening, and the internal practice. Now we have to talk about the output, the actual speaking.
The scary part for many.
It is, and the sources are completely unified in their advice here. To progress, we have to strategically let go of the fear of imperfect speech.
That concept of the waiting game, the idea that you have to wait until you feel ready or perfect, is the single biggest self-imposed roadblock that the source has identified.
It's a trap.
It is. The materials challenge this idea directly. Readiness is not a prerequisite to speaking. Readiness comes from the act of speaking. If a learner waits for perfection, they've signed up for an indefinite stressful wait. Using short, imperfect, simple sentences is absolutely not a sign of failure. It's a sign of courage. It's progress. It's forward movement.
But what about the psychology of it? The fear of sounding stupid or making embarrassing mistakes. Doesn't that sometimes make waiting feel like the safer, more rational option for the learner?
That's a completely valid and extremely common feeling. And the sources address this by contrasting two types of fear: the fear of imperfection and the fear of staying stuck. Simple speaking is the strategic solution to reduce the fear of imperfection. By keeping your sentences extremely short and focused, maybe just 3 or 4 words, you minimize the linguistic risk. The focus shifts entirely to successful communication rather than grammatical complexity. The psychological sources call this lowering the consequence of error. If the sentence is simple, the potential error is simple, and so the cognitive cost of making that mistake is tiny.
So simple phrases aren't just linguistic tools, they're confidence tools designed to lower the stakes.
Exactly. They're courage builders. Let's look at a few simple phrases that immediately help build that foundational courage. Listen to the steady rhythm and just feel the non-judgmental power these short, direct statements carry. Modeling a slow, calm pace. I am learning English.
A gentle pause. A clear declaration of identity in action. It sets a powerful, honest context for any conversation you might have.
Modeling a slow, calm pace. I am trying my best.
A gentle pause. This expresses effort and honesty with almost no linguistic pressure. It lets you focus completely on the sound and the delivery.
These phrases carry so much weight because they remove that heavy analytical burden from your mind. By focusing on making a short, successful connection, you prove your capacity for communication immediately.
And what's really fascinating here is how often the sources remind us that native speakers themselves rely heavily on simple language in daily life.
Constantly.
Complexity is often completely irrelevant to effective communication. We use short, simple structures and repetitions all the time.
That is such vital context for the learner to internalize. So often, learners feel they have to sound like an academic text or a piece of high literature. But simple speech lets you focus on the immediate human goal, connection. You're concentrating on the person, on the shared meaning, not on complicated syntax. And because the language is easy to access, you build confidence based on the successful, immediate feedback of being understood.
And confidence, when you establish it early through simple success, is what accelerates everything else later on.
Precisely. Starting the year speaking simply builds that courage early because it minimizes the mental friction of starting a conversation. You prove to yourself over and over that you can speak and you will be understood, even if it's just with short sentences. This early courage tackles the fundamental fear of speaking head-on, which makes attempting more complex things later so much easier because the core resistance is already broken down.
Okay, so routine is the bedrock of habit. Like, we've established the morning practice. Let's talk about how simple English can fit into daily rituals beyond the morning.
Right, throughout the whole day.
Specifically, the importance of these consistent short moments and how the end of the day can be used for really deep, meaningful practice.
The sources are very specific about the power of frequent short moments. The practice doesn't stop after your morning coffee. You can practice simple English while you're walking, folding laundry, waiting in line.
Moments of downtime.
Exactly. The scientific insight is undeniable. Frequent, short exposure, even 5 minutes 3 times a day, works much better for long-term retention than one long 2-hour study session once a week.
So we should think of it as microdosing the language throughout the day. A 5-minute simple English reflection while you're making dinner is scientifically more effective than intense, infrequent grammar work.
Yes, because frequent exposure creates a sustainable rhythm, and that rhythm reduces the internal resistance we feel toward a chore or a task. When you consistently integrate simple English into non-stressful moments, you prevent burnout and you increase your brain's comfort level. Over time, English stops being something you force yourself to do. It becomes a natural, almost subconscious part of who you are.
And as the evening comes around, January often invites us to look inward, to reflect on the day or the week. Simple English seems perfectly suited for this kind of reflective practice.
Evening reflection in English is exceptionally meaningful. It creates a powerful connection between emotion, personal experience, and the language. When you use English to process how you feel, even just saying, I feel tired or I'm grateful for the quiet, you forge stronger memory links.
Because the language is now tied to a real lived experience.
Exactly. It moves the language beyond the academic and into the realm of the personal.
Let's give our listeners some examples of simple reflection phrases they could use, maybe in their minds or jotted down in a journal before sleep. We'll keep the slow, reflective pacing.
Listen to these phrases and think about how they might connect to your own end-of-day thoughts. Modeling a slow, calm pace. Today was long. I need rest now.
A gentle pause, a simple, clear summary of the day, and a statement of need.
Modeling a slow, calm pace. Last year was challenging, but I learned much.
A gentle pause, using simple past tense to acknowledge a difficulty, but still focusing on a positive action learning.
Modeling a slow, calm pace. This year, I want more balance and time to read.
A gentle pause, connecting your hopes with small, tangible actions.
There's a profound curiosity mentioned in the behavioral psychology sources about this. Journaling or reflecting in a second language can actually feel less intense emotionally than doing it in your native language.
Really? How so?
It creates this subtle but effective emotional distance. It can make reflecting on difficult topics like stress or disappointment feel safer and easier to process because the language acts as a kind of protective layer.
That is a remarkable insight. So English can become a safe space, a low-intensity lab for expressing deep, complex thoughts through simple, manageable words. It separates the feeling from the intensity of your native language.
Exactly. Using English this way for genuine personal reflection instantly transforms the whole learning journey into a highly personal and meaningful experience. It goes way beyond just academic study. It makes the language relevant to your soul and your inner growth.
As we move out of that initial January rush and into the early weeks of the year, how do we keep this gentle momentum going? How do we make it sustainable for the whole year? The sources point very strongly to two crucial elements for long-term health: curiosity and self-compassion.
Curiosity isn't just a nice to have. It's the fundamental engine of all deep learning. We have to let ourselves explore without feeling pressure. When you're genuinely curious, you start to actively notice the language around you.
Right. You're not just studying it, you're observing it in the wild.
Exactly. The subtle difference in intonation in a song, a new phrasal verb in a movie. Simple English gives you the strong foundation that lets you recognize those more complex patterns faster because your basic comprehension and your acoustic map are already secure.
You stop feeling like you're searching for difficult, hidden answers and start feeling like you're just discovering familiar pieces of a puzzle.
Precisely. And the sources offer a fun curiosity about English itself.
Right.
It's a linguistic sponge. It borrows words from Germanic, French, Latin, countless other languages, which is why so many words might already feel familiar to a learner, even at the beginning. Recognizing those connections fuels real curiosity, and that keeps motivation alive. When curiosity is high, mistakes stop being failures. They just become interesting, necessary data points for your exploration.
That exploratory, playful energy is exactly what's needed to make the learning stick long after the January enthusiasm fades. But curiosity, as you mentioned, needs to be balanced by that final, crucial element: self-compassion. What does active kindness to yourself look like in the daily practice of simple English?
It looks like stopping the comparison cycle immediately. Self-compassion means you define progress realistically, day by day. Progress is not speaking fast like a news anchor or perfectly like a textbook.
Yeah.
True progress looks like understanding a little more than yesterday or using one more simple phrase today than I did last week. That small, incremental, secure improvement is the only thing you should celebrate.
We often hear these dramatic stories about big breakthroughs in language learning. What do the successful learners in your sources say was their most significant turning point?
Overwhelmingly, the sources highlight that advanced learners cite stopping self-criticism as their biggest breakthrough moment.
Really?
Yes. When they finally stop being harsh on themselves for using simple language or for making minor grammar mistakes, all the cognitive energy they were using for self-policing gets redirected toward absorption and communication. Simple language supports this mindset perfectly because it removes the pressure for complex performance. It forces you to choose patience over the punishing pursuit of perfection.
Choosing patience over perfection, that is a profound and actually achievable goal for any new year.
It is. Learning with consistent kindness dramatically improves your long-term adherence and, crucially, it reinforces your confidence. You are fundamentally more likely to show up for your practice tomorrow if you weren't cruel to yourself today. Simple English, when you embrace it with self-compassion, ensures you're building not just a skill, but a sustainable, lifelong positive habit.
So, what does this entire deep dive mean for you, the learner, starting out this year? The sources make it so clear. This simple, calm approach isn't a short challenge or a quick fix.
No, not at all.
It's the beginning of a calm, steady, and fulfilling long-term relationship with the English language.
It's about giving yourself permission to grow naturally, giving yourself the space to internalize the rhythm and the patterns, and setting a pace that your life and your mind can actually sustain. The simple practice that feels slow and focused today becomes the robust, resilient fluency of tomorrow.
And let's just reiterate that definition of true fluency that the sources share. Fluency, in this context, it's not about using big words or mastering complex grammar.
No, true fluency is defined by an overwhelming sense of ease and comfort with the language. When English feels familiar, when it truly functions as that companion we talked about earlier, communication just flows naturally. You're no longer nervously translating or rehearsing, you're just connecting your thoughts to the sounds.
That deliberate focus on comfort, simplicity, and consistency now sets the perfect, sustainable tone for your entire learning year. And remember, gentle listening is the most powerful foundation you can possibly lay.
We want to thank you directly for joining us on this intentional deep dive into starting your English journey with such clarity and calm. We hope this discussion, delivered at a pace that encourages focused listening and deep absorption, has felt supportive and reassuring.
And remember that channels like Fluent Mindcast are dedicated spaces providing this exact kind of calm, supportive, and real-life English listening practice as you start on this important new year.
We wish you clarity, patience, and unwavering confidence as you embrace that blank notebook and begin your sustainable language journey.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.